Robertson welcoming you to TV Confidential, radio talk show about television that will replay our conversation with Steve Binder in our second hour. Steve Binder, Emmy Award-winning producer and director of the 1968 Elvis Comeback Special. We'll stay tuned for that coming up later on. In this hour, we will welcome back our friend Tom Lisanti. Tom's latest book includes a detailed look at the evolution of the quote-unquote Elvis movie genre, with a particular focus on the musicals that Elvis made for MGM between 1964 and 1967. We hope you'll stay tuned for that as well. In the meantime, Tony Figueroa and Donna Allen are with us as they bring us This Week in TV History. Tony's segment, as always, is brought to us by our friends at Story Salon, Southern California's longest-running, regularly performing live storytelling ensemble with live shows every Wednesday night at the Art Parlor in Valley Village, as well as occasionally other nights of the week at the Art Parlor in Valley Village, including the quarterly Fiction Night, which is next scheduled for sometime in September, correct?
Correct.
For more information, StorySalon.com, Facebook.com, Story Salon. What do you have for us tonight?
All right. I would say that you would have to look at a very important day in 1977, in the summer of 1977, which, by the way, 77 was also one of those bad years, like 2016.
We lost Groucho. We lost Charlie Chaplin.
We lost Freddie Prinze. So we lost a lot of people, and one of the biggest stars that we lost that year, August 16th, 1977, was Elvis Presley.
And ordinarily, we don't have guests during Tony's segment because, because
it's my segment. Because it's Tony's segment. It's all about me.
Well, you and Donna.
Thank you.
It sounds really bad when I say next time all by myself.
That's all right. But because this is a special date in the live, I was going to say it's a special date in the life of Elvis. There's probably a better way I can put that.
Well, I'm sure he had better days.
I'm sure he had a lot better days. But certainly for Elvis fans around the world, August 16th, 1977 is a day that is remembered and commemorated in many ways, and this being the 40th anniversary of the death of Elvis, we thought we would invite our friend Cory Cooper to join us for our segment. Cory is a renowned Elvis Presley historian, noted authority on the life and music of Elvis. He has contributed to many books, radio shows, movies, and television projects related to the King. He's also worked with documentary director John Scheinfeld and has appeared on countless nationally syndicated programs around the world. One of the things that makes Cory unique among Elvis aficionados is that one way or another, Cory met pretty much every surviving member of the Memphis Mafia. And that's why, and he has soaked in all sorts of information, not only about Elvis the performer, but Elvis the man. So without any further ado, Cory Cooper, welcome back to our program.
Thank you for having me back on. Good to be here.
What first drew you into the world of Elvis Presley?
Well, on my mom's side of the family, everybody was in music, so music was always a big aspect of our life growing up. And somewhere along the way, I caught the Elvis bug, and he just stood out to me. And, 4 or 5 years old, my mom got me an album, and I was hooked.
What would you describe as the Elvis bug? Because I've known people who were fans of Elvis, when he first appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show or on Milton Berle. And then there are all these people who have become huge Elvis fans that maybe they weren't even alive at the same time Elvis was alive. People post-1977 that somehow discovered him, or people who just discovered him much later in life. They didn't appreciate him when he was around and then really appreciated him after he was gone.
Well, when I first discovered him at that young age, to begin with, I liked the music. I liked the feel of the music. I thought he looked cool in the 70s style jumpsuits. And then when I got older and researched him more and knew more about his life, well, then, of course, I became a whole other fan that went with, his talent and the charisma and his humanitarian efforts and his impact on the history of music. That's what so stood out to me and drew me more and more into the Elvis world and wanting to know more about him and how important he was to music and how amazing that this one single person could have made such the huge impact that he did, that virtually changed everything that everybody knew about music and entertainment.
Well, I think for many of us, Elvis Presley was always a part of the soundtrack of our lives. I mean, even I was a very little girl, and I knew who Elvis Presley was because, I mean, his songs were on the radio. You heard, you could not know Elvis. And I remember the first time I really saw him perform was on that television special in, was it 1968? Is that what I'm remembering?
Yes, the comeback special.
That was incredible. I didn't mean to see it. I think I was in my mother's room looking for something, and I heard the voice, and I turned around, and I did not leave her bedroom. I sat down on the floor and watched this man perform, who was just spectacular. It made an impact on me that way. Again, Cory, just like you said, the charisma.
Absolutely. You know, and what draws you into that show as well is the fact that he's basically doing the first MTV Unplugged, decades before any of us ever even knew what that was. So then again, there's Elvis being the innovator, doing something way ahead of his time. But yeah, that's special. I mean, talk about blasting you back into the public eye after doing, you know, most of the entire decade of the 60s with churning out 3 movies a year, and then he comes back and bam, hits us with that special. It was the highest rated special for the entire year, and who would have thought it was started out to be a Christmas special, but thank goodness that's not what they ended up doing with it.
Yes, I understand it was Elvis himself who said, I don't want to do a Christmas special. So
that was a weird time because, you know, since you brought up Christmas specials, that was the days when we would have Bing Crosby and Bob Hope and Perry Como.
And they're more family-oriented, as I remember.
And so, I mean, to visualize an Elvis Christmas special at that time with Elvis around the, you know, the tree singing, you know, White Christmas or something, just it would not. But a question I would also have just for everyone here, what do you think Elvis's place was in the late 60s during the counterculture when that was growing? Was he already passé by a certain amount of fan base, or how did he kind of plug in there?
Well, you know, he kind of was at that time, of course. You know, we had the British invasion. We had Elvis not doing any live performing during most of the 60s and just doing the movies and the movie soundtracks. And so, you know, there was a lot that was passing Elvis by. I mean, in fact, part of the thing when Elvis was getting ready to do the 68 special was the fact that he could, at that point, he could basically walk around in some parts of L.A. and nobody really kind of knew who he was anymore because of the younger crowd. So that singer special was so much more important than just being a TV special. I mean, I think that was just catapulted him right back into where he had left off, you know, before he went to the Army. I mean, it just put him right back on the map, which of course led to the live performing again, which led to the summer and winter sessions in Las Vegas, and it totally catapulted him right back into us seeing him on TV and hearing him on the radio again.
We're talking to Cory Cooper, world-renowned Elvis historian. As a sought-out authority on the life and career of Elvis Presley, Cory draws from his vast knowledge and his deep ties to many people in the world of Elvis, including among his many contacts are authors, band members, performers, and members of the Memphis Mafia. Cory, what's the best way for people to reach you?
Well, they can always get me my email on AOL, elvisexpert@aol.com, or my never-finished website, elvisexpert.com.
elvisexpert.com or elvisexpert@aol.com. The other thing about the 68 comeback special, Cory, is that it was one of the first glimpses of Elvis the person, because as you say, it is unplugged both in terms of Elvis on stage, but by design, and we know, and you know this, and we know this because we had a chance to talk to Steve Binder, the man who produced and directed the 68 comeback special. So it was. I mean, he spent an awful lot of time getting to know Elvis in the weeks before they filmed that thing, and so you really get a glimpse of Elvis the person, and that pretty much reflects your approach to when you talk to people such as us about your knowledge of Elvis, because yes, you know all the records and you know all the movies, but you can tell us stuff about Elvis the person that nobody else can, and that's what really interests you.
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, of course, you know, you gotta love the music, but it was just, I mean, just Elvis had that, I mean, the overall picture of Elvis was, I mean, the American dream. He had the good looks. Nobody looked like him. He had the different sound, the way he dressed, just everything about him was so unique and stood out that, I mean, there's so many aspects of his life that you can be fans of, but it's just, like I said, that iconic image of Elvis is everywhere. And even now, here we are 40 years since he passed away, and a week can't go by without an Elvis reference in pop culture somewhere. I mean, it's amazing the test of time. I mean, 4 decades have gone by, but yet Elvis is still out there as if he's still alive and performing. And the way that the estate has doled out music and extra footage and found footage of projects and everything over the years has kept him out into the public eye.
Where were you on August 16th, 77, when you heard the news of Elvis's passing?
Well, I was only 9 years old, and I was actually in the front yard of our house outside of Portland, Oregon. And my buddy across the street came over and told me, and of course I didn't believe him and thought he was just messing with me because he knew I was an Elvis fan. But yeah, I can picture it right now, exactly where I was standing in the front yard, just like everybody can that's old enough to remember. Everybody knows where they were at when they heard the news.
Yeah, I mean, like you, I was about the same age. I think I was. Well, I think I was like 12 or 13. But no, I was. It was a summer day, obviously, and I was outside in the backyard. I had the radio on, and I mean, I knew who Elvis was. It didn't quite affect me the way it affected my mom. My mom was a huge Elvis fan, and because my mom. I come from a large family, so my mom was the CEO and the drill master, and she was no nonsense. The few times she would let her guard down is if Channel 7 played an Elvis movie on the 6:30 movie. As a matter of fact, one of the few times she would let the TV play during dinner time is if they were playing an Elvis movie. So.
Now, I remember being in a car back in Cincinnati. The AM radio was on, and a news headline came on, and I'll never forget this because I'd never heard a news headline presented this way. The announcer said, "This is not a joke. Elvis Presley has died."
Yeah.
And to this day, thinking about it, I mean, it was just something so unbelievable. I'd never thought about 77 being a year that we lost so many people, but we did, and this one... I think a lot of people saw Elvis as immortal. He has become. I mean, but I remember watching the news on TV that night. So many people openly weeping and not wanting to believe.
We're talking to Cory Cooper, world-renowned expert on the life and career of Elvis Presley, as we continue our commemoration of the 40th anniversary of the death of Elvis Presley. We'll take a quick time out, then we'll continue our conversation with Cory, Tony, and Donna here on TV Confidential. Ed Robertson along with Tony Figueroa and Donna Allen from Story Salon, Southern California's longest-running, regularly performing live storytelling ensemble, which I understand is at a new location.
Yeah, we're very excited about it. We're moving, actually, to the Party Art Studio on Laurel Canyon Boulevard, 5302 Laurel Canyon. It's a new art gallery, and it's
beautiful.
It's beautiful. Donna and I have been involved with Story Salon for the last 9+ years. We're going to be in an art gallery now. We're going to have a $5 cover, some nice refreshments, and a wonderful eclectic evening of storytelling.
Which is a great environment because, it as you say, the word is eclectic, and for $5, it's a great evening of entertainment. You can't ask for much more.
No, not at all. And these stories, some of them are funny, some of them are tragic, some of them are a little off the wall, but we just have a wonderful time keeping the art of storytelling alive.
And you can find out more about it by going to storysalon.com.
Accredited by Guinness World Records, welcome to Archival Television Audio Incorporated, a peerless TV soundtrack archive, preserving the audio from television's first 3 decades, the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, the golden and silver age of television.
For more information, go to atvaudio.com. One more item, if you're listening to us in Southern California or plan on visiting the LA area next week, Getting Ed Laid, the short film starring Ed Asner and Gene Smart that is also written and directed by Deborah Pearl. Getting Ed Laid is an official selection at the Holly Shorts Film Festival 2000 here in Los Angeles. Getting Ed Laid will be screened on Tuesday, August 15th at 2:30 p.m. That's Tuesday, August 15th at 2:30 p.m. at the TCL Chinese 6 Theaters in Hollywood, located at Hollywood and Highland on Level 3. Getting Ed Laid is in the shorts program called Golden Age. For tickets and more information on the screening of Getting Ed Laid, go to hollyshorts.com, www.hollyshorts.com.
Hi, this is Ed Asner, and you're listening to TV Confidential.
Hey, a little less conversation, a little more action, please. All this aggravation ain't satisfaction in me.
Ed Roberts with a reminder that 60s film historian Tom Lisanti will join us later on in this hour. Tom's latest book, Talkin' 60s Drive-In Movies, includes a comprehensive chapter on the movie career of Elvis Presley. We hope you'll stay tuned for that. In the meantime, Tony Figueroa and Donna Allen are with us, along with our guest, Cory Cooper. Cory Cooper, world-renowned expert on the life and career of Elvis Presley, as we continue our commemoration of the 40th anniversary of Elvis's death. You can contact Cory Cooper directly at elvisexpert@aol.com. Before we went to break, Donna was recalling some of the local news coverage that she watched on the night of August 16th, 1977. We talk about this occasionally, Cory, on the program, when the passing of a particular celebrity, whether it's a film celebrity or in the case of Elvis, a music celebrity, music icon, transcends the world of entertainment news. I remember CBS did either a 15-minute or a half an hour special report at 11:30 that night, narrated by Walter Cronkite.
Whoa!
I mean that's a double thing right
that's
there.
That's big.
Yeah, it's one of those. I was living in Puerto Rico. I was actually spending the summer with my dad in Puerto Rico. I live in L.A. for the school year and then spend the summer in Puerto Rico with my dad. And I remember that morning the San Juan Star being delivered. And, just that was the top news story. And my dad's reaction was, just kind of stunned, because my dad knew Elvis in the Army. My dad was responsible for Elvis being drafted. He was stationed in Memphis at that time. And so he knew the guy, and his first reaction was, that poor kid, he was in over his head. And
Wow.
He just knew that. I mean, he referred to him, at 40 years old, that poor kid, because he remembers that kid. So he was drafted, this is 1958.
59, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and so my dad was there, and my dad dealt with all the paperwork of all the young draftees, and of course Elvis was a big deal. And he had stories like he was really polite and cool and understanding the circumstances and worked within the rules, and he was there when the sideburns were shaved off. And he really had that was a bad day.
It was a bad day, but circling back, Cory, before we called you, Tony told us that his dad was referred to as the meanie who drafted Elvis.
That's what my uncle called him, yeah.
Well, he didn't want to go around any high schools then, did he? One of those kids would have really wanted to lynch him up.
Oh, yeah, well, being a Puerto Rican guy in the South, that was probably already being, a possibility. But, he has a few of those stories, too. But
I mean, what a cool aspect, though, and a connection, to Elvis, though, his dad. I mean, what an amazing pivotal time in Elvis's career, and there you have a direct tie to that piece of history.
My older sister was about 2 years old at the time, and one of the things that Elvis asked my dad was, "Do you have any daughters?" And he said, "Yeah, I have a daughter." So my 2-year-old sister of the time has, she still has it, autographed photo. My dad has an autographed photo. I think every officer that was stationed there has an autographed photo of Elvis. But the other part that I thought was kind of amusing is Donna and I went to Graceland, and there is a section dedicated to Elvis the Army years, and I'm looking at documents and trying to find my dad's signature on these documents. And I called him up and I said, "I don't see your signature on any of these documents." He said, "Of course not." Because his signature is pretty much on all the all the new inductees' documents except Elvis's, because that's when the upper brass from upstairs came down. They wanted their signature on the paperwork. And when he's telling me that, and you could tell he's a little pissed off still. I think we went to Graceland in 2001. So what would that be?
Oh, that's like almost 40-something years after
almost 40-something years after and he's still pissed over that situation. But
and if you remember the history of that as well, Elvis got a 3-month deferment because he was needed to finish King Creole, which he was working on at the time.
That's right, and as I recall, of the many movies he did from the mid-50s up through the mid-60s, most of them, by Elvis's own admission, would be forgettable. But King Creole, as I recall, that was one of the few roles that he liked. That was one of the few movies he enjoyed doing because it gave him a chance to act. And Elvis, we've talked about this before. You know this, Cory. Elvis, when given the opportunity, was a very good actor.
And he could have, yeah, exactly, if he would have just got the right scripts. And you do see it in King Creole, which was Elvis's favorite movie of his own. And, you see it in King Creole. You see it in Wild in the Country. You see it in Charlo. You see when he got a good dramatic role and they didn't have him singing on the beach with a giant band that you don't see, that he actually did well with those roles. It's just that, Colonel Parker got him in those contracts and they were whipping out 3 of them a year and every single one made a profit. And as you know how that business works too, they use, Hal Wallace and all those producers used the money made from an Elvis movie because they said, Hal Wallace used to say, the only sure thing in Hollywood is an Elvis movie. And then they would take those profits and go and make bigger budgeted movies with all-star casts on the coattails of Elvis's financial doings with the movies.
I think when we did our segment early in the year on Mary Tyler Moore, I believe we brought up Change of Habit.
Change of Habit,
which is one of Elvis's last movies. Now, I don't know about you, Cory. I actually thought he was pretty good in that. I mean, it was not a typical Elvis Presley movie, and it was not a typical Elvis role.
No, and I agree with it. And one thing I always think about with Change of Habit is the dialogue in that movie is amazing. I mean, it's very dicey, very racy kind of talk in that movie, and I can't imagine what that must have been like in 1969 with an Elvis movie having the kind of dialogue that they did in there. They made me really approach some topics in there that they're amazing for the times that they got away with some of the things that they said. I mean, alluding to gay people, alluding to a rape, alluding to a underage girl trying to come on to Elvis. I mean, there's a lot of overtones in that movie that are amazing to me.
Well, also showing, a part of urban life that we didn't always want to show, let alone had an opportunity to show the diversity, and also I think the position of the Catholic Church at that time, kind of going through a little bit of a reform and a evolution and how they would go to the streets. It kind of, you kind of think of a movie like Sister Act. That's how, the same conflicts were still existing. Yeah. Maybe you had mafia ties and urban renewal and all of those themes in there. But I think also what makes it even more impactful now is how that movie ends with Mary Tyler Moore looking at the image of Elvis playing the guitar at the church and looking at the image of Jesus and because post 1977, the deification of Elvis, the idolization of Elvis. There's I don't know what the ratio would be between how many Elvis icons are on people's dashboards versus, one of the saints or Jesus himself.
Well, Elvis never said he was bigger than God.
No, he never did.
That was John Lennon.
That was John Lennon who said that. I think Elvis does have a certain gospel background also, so I think there was a certain reverence. But at the same time, and I know we're just kind of bouncing around the same time period, Elvis was never outspoken about what was happening on it. I think, Change of Habit, there was a lot of stuff going on, but I don't think Elvis ever said anything in interviews about these issues. I know he was big on what would be called the drug wars now, but he never talked about what was happening at the time.
Cory?
No, and he specifically did that. That was planned to be that way, to not be very political or come out for one side or the other. He was, he wanted to just stay neutral. In fact, if you even see in one of his press conferences, you hear a reporter ask him a political question, and he declines to answer, and he says the perfect thing to say, which you would hope that more say it. And Elvis just said, I'm an entertainer, and he keeps his opinions to himself. And that would just, that was the end of any kind of political discussion. And it was done that way because, Elvis didn't want to upset one half of the population if he said something they didn't agree with. So he just declined to talk about political issues. Although Elvis was a Democrat, and that's how he would have voted. But, and also Elvis, other than In the Ghetto and If I Can Dream from the Singers Special, you didn't have Elvis singing a lot of songs about the times that were going on. So those were big. Again, Elvis making a big impact with those type songs.
We're talking to Cory Cooper, world-renowned Elvis historian, as a sought-out authority on the life and career of Elvis Presley. Cory draws from his vast knowledge and his deep ties to many people in the world of Elvis. Cory has contributed commentary, knowledge, insight, all sorts of expertise to countless radio shows, books, film and television projects. One of the books that he contributed to, he wrote a very nice back cover blurb for the memoir of Anita Wood, Once Upon a Time, Elvis and Anita. If you want to reach Cory, if you're producing an Elvis project, if you do a podcast on Elvis, if you're looking for unique, one-of-the-kind, insightful content about Elvis, you can contact Cory Cooper at elvisexpert@aol.com, elvisexpert@aol.com. Around the same time, a couple of years before Change of Habit, if I got the chronology right, he did a movie with Michelle Carey called Live a Little, Love a Little. I remember it was shot in like wild 1967 Technicolor with, angles and garish go-go girls and stuff like that. But what I remember is in the last moments of the movie, Dick Sargent punches Elvis in the movie.
Live a Little, Love a Little is one of my favorite Elvis movies just because of the comedic edge to it.
Yeah.
He seemed like he was having a fun time with that movie. And also, I think Michelle Carey is one of the prettiest co-stars he ever had.
Yeah. I just saw her on FBI that she shot within a year of that. And she and Elvis, worked very well together.
And also Live a Little, Love a Little had a couple of my favorite songs. It had Edge of Reality, which I really like that song because it's just so indicative of the 60s. It just has that perfect sound.
It also has a little less conversation, right?
A Little Less Conversation was from that movie as well, which was redone in 2002 and became a big hit.
You brought up a little bit about a certain love that Elvis had for technology. I think it was well documented that he would have like 3 TVs set up so he could watch all the networks. And he was interested in the news. But he seemed to be very, very fascinated with the new technology. You brought up Elvis Unplugged before that was a thing. He died before there was an MTV, before the industry was going through. I think he died around the time that disco was coming into play. So that might have, that might have been a sign. But just. Because he was so into, I think, technology and electronics, I understand he also loved Star Wars. So Star Wars was released a couple of months before he died. Yeah. He saw this movie. He thought it was the most amazing thing from accounts I've heard. And he wanted to do something like that. What direction do you think he would have gone into if we didn't lose him at that age?
Well, I think that he would have definitely gone into music producing. Because Elvis had a fantastic ear. He would make little changes on his own recordings, and he just had a knack for that. So I definitely think that he would have gone into more producing. I think eventually he might have gotten to have a film role that he really, really wanted to do and sink his teeth into. A lot of people don't agree with me, but I think if Elvis would have gotten rid of Colonel Parker after he came back from the military, that definitely that movie and music career would have been a lot different, but it's kind of hard to say now in hindsight, considering the fact that, he's the biggest entertainer that the world of entertainment's ever known. So who's wrong and who's right? But I think things would have been a lot different. There would have been different song choices for sure. But, Elvis would still have his hand out there, but I'm not so sure that, he would be on that stressful touring schedule that he was on. But he definitely would have been producing music.
Is there any truth to the story that he was considered for the remake of A Star Is Born with Barbra Streisand?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. She and John Peters actually approached Elvis in Las Vegas, and he was excited at the time, and did want to do it. A couple of things that ended up happening, though, is that sadly Elvis wasn't in the perfect health situation at that time, but it would have given him a good challenge to maybe get healthier at that time. But Colonel Parker kind of outpriced him and wanted Elvis to be top billing, and so I think Colonel Parker just kind of was throwing those things in there just to try to just throw them off the trail and see that it wasn't going to work, because all in all, even if they would have agreed to that, Elvis, unless he would have gotten himself together, that would not have been the greatest role. And also Colonel Parker didn't want Elvis to play a character like that, because we all know what that character that Chris Christopherson played is all about.
You mentioned, okay, you know, what would happen if he had parted ways with Colonel Parker, you know, after the Army. But you're circling back to the 1968 special. While as you just alluded to, by and large, Elvis sort of deferred to the Colonel. As I recall from our conversation with Steve Binder, that was one of the few times that Elvis put his foot down and said, no, we're going to do it this way. And obviously the end product is the better for it.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's too bad that Elvis didn't do that on other occasions. You know, and there were occasions, too, where Elvis actually fired Colonel Parker, but of course, obviously, loyalty went out, and that never, you know, came about. But, you know, and also, Colonel Parker would send him an itemized list and tell him how many millions that he was owed if they were no longer together. So, I mean, Elvis was just put in a bad spot all around with that.
Maybe it's more legend than fact, but I understand Elvis fired everybody several times over. I think anybody who was off on the payroll, which I guess all of the Memphis Mafia, at one time or another, they were fired. It was probably an annual event. But just, you know, and I don't know how much of this is legend that gets perpetuated.
Well, maybe it's because they beat him playing touch football.
Yes. He gets in a bad mood, you're off the payroll, and then bring him back, get him a Cadillac, and everything will be smooth over.
Elvis definitely didn't hold a grudge for long with a lot of his guys. You know, and sadly, you mentioned earlier that a lot of the people that I know and have friendships with in the Elvis world, you know, sadly, they're at that age where a lot of them have been passing away. We just last month lost Sonny West.
Yes, right.
You know, and a few months before that, we lost Joe Esposito, and all these fantastic sources of information, first-hand accounts of the people that shared in the historic nature of Elvis. You know, there's not too many of them left now from the old Memphis Mafia and inner Elvis circle.
Well, we've had an opportunity to talk to some of the actors who worked with Elvis, you know, in one project or another. I mean, I can think Julie Adams comes to mind, William Shallert comes to mind. There are several others, but to a person, they all almost always focus on what a true Southern gentleman he was. I mean, he knew he was the king, but he didn't act like the king, and he was a lot more down to earth than you might think.
Yeah, and how great is that? I mean, at the core of it all, Elvis was still just a nice, perfect-mannered Southern boy that had his respect and decency with everybody, and you'd be hard-pressed to find any co-star or anybody, for that matter, that worked with Elvis to have anything negative to say about him. And I think that's part of the reason why he was so popular with the fans, was that down-to-earth nature. Like you said, here he is, the king of rock and roll, but yet he'd go down to the gates at Graceland and talk to the fans, make sure everybody got a picture and autograph, and invite them up to the house and hang out. I mean, he was just right there with the people, and he was accessible. You know, certainly a time that can't be done now, safety reasons wise. And but I think that's it. I mean, people identified with Elvis as, hey, even though he's who he is, he's still one of us.
Got less than a minute left. Or any final thoughts, Cory, as we conclude our remembrance of Elvis on the occasion of the 40th anniversary of his passing?
Absolutely. 40 years ago, can you believe that? You know, sit back and enjoy Elvis. Put on some music and just commemorate and honor the music and entertainment that he left us. In those short 42 years, that man was busy and left us a lot of entertainment to enjoy. So that's what I always say. Smile, listen to your favorite record, and give Elvis a thumbs up on that day.
Cory Cooper is available for radio, television, film, as well as commercial and voiceover projects, as well as content for film and television and radio projects related to the life and career of Elvis. Presley as a gifted speaker on the topic of Elvis. Cory's available for corporate functions, special occasions, public appearances, and everything in between. You can reach Cory directly, elvisexpert@aol.com, elvisexpert@aol.com. Cory, always a pleasure to chat with you. Look forward to our next conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Great to be back on.
childoftelevision.blogspot.com, childoftelevision.blogspot.com, also storysalon.com or facebook.com/storysalon. Donna's new book, by the way, is called Fall Again, Beginnings. It's a romantic novel that asks the question, what would you do if you met the perfect person, only it was not the perfect time? For more information, go to fallagainseries.com. Tom Lisanti will join us when we come back on TV Confidential. The Perpetual Paycheck. 5 secrets to getting a job, keeping a job, and earning income for life in the loyalty-free workplace. The Perpetual Paycheck, now available as an audiobook through audible.com, iTunes, and amazon.com.
Cam Caricatures will keep the fun rolling at your next party, convention, or event through a live video feed. As friends or colleagues gather around the webcam, I can see them on my screen, and they can view my caricatures come to life on their own screen. The completed black and white drawing will then be emailed to you to print out. Pricing and details are at hamcamcaricatures.com. That's HAMMCAMCARICATURES.com.
Buying or selling a home can be one of the most stressful things we'll ever do in life. But it doesn't have to be. And no one knows better than our friends at Front Porch Realty Group. They're a community of realtors serving the Northern Bay Area of California that cares about their clients as individuals first and foremost. Whether you're a first-time buyer or looking to lease or sell your property in the Bay Area, Front Porch Realty Group will help you through this important transition by providing you with the right information for your situation while lessening the pain. They also work with a network of realtors throughout California who provide the same high caliber of customer service. Call Front Porch Realty Group at 415-886-7411 for a realtor referral near you. You can also visit their website, frontporchrealtygroup.com, for more information on the services they provide, including upcoming workshops and seminars. For more information, call 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com. Front Porch Realty Group. They'll find the solution that works best for you.
Ed Robertson here to tell you how you can get a free first ride with Uber, the mobile app that connects you with a ride at the touch of a button in just a matter of minutes. Uber has drivers in cities across the country and around the world, while payment is seamless and cashless. To download the app, go to uber.com and enter the promo code TVConfidential, all one word, and you will receive a free first ride up to $20. To sign up directly with the promo code included, go to get.uber.com/go/TVConfidential, get.uber.com/go/TVConfidential. If you've listened to TV Confidential and like what you've heard, please consider supporting our efforts by becoming a patron of our show through Patreon. It's easy to do and costs as little as $1 a month. For more information, go to patreon.com/TVConfidential or click the Patreon button on the homepage at tvconfidential.net.
Hi, this is Gary Lockwood. You're listening to TV Confidential.
Can't you see?
Ed Robertson welcoming you back to TV Confidential, radio talk show about television that is devoting our program this week to the 40th anniversary of the death of Elvis Presley. Coming up at the top of the hour, actor and author Michael Dante will join us for a remembrance of the time that he worked with Elvis in the 1962 movie Kid Galahad. We hope you'll stay tuned for that. In the meantime, earlier in the program, we talked a little bit about Elvis's movie career. Joining us now is our friend Tom Lisanti. Tom has written 9 books about 60s Hollywood, the latest of which, Talking 60s Drive-In Movies, includes a detailed look at Elvis's movie career with a particular focus on the musicals that the King made for MGM between 1964 and 1967. Tom, welcome back to the program.
Oh, thanks, Ed. Thanks for inviting me back.
You described the quote-unquote Elvis film as a movie with picturesque locations, lots of songs, at least one fist fight, at least one romantic complication, and lots of pretty girls. But like a lot of things, the Elvis film formula kind of evolved, didn't it?
Yes, based on the box office. Hawaii was the one that really set the tone for the Elvis film because it made a lot of money. And the two films that followed were more conventional. There was Follow That Dream, which was more a standard comedy. And then Elvis, they redid Kid Galahad, a boxing drama with Elvis. Those two had less songs, less pretty girls, and they didn't score as well at the box office. So following up on that, Hal Wallace, who produced Blue Hawaii, decided to take Elvis back to Hawaii for Girls, 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 with Stella Stevens and Laurel Goodwin, again, chock full of pretty scenery, pretty girls, lots of songs, and he had another huge box office smash. So everybody after that sort of like followed that formula. And the Colonel was really the one controlling this because Elvis had a salary plus a percentage of the profits. So the more money the movies made, the more money went into the Colonel and Elvis's pocket.
We touched on this a little bit earlier in the program. This particular stage, the early 60s, was a period where the Colonel's control on Elvis was more or less ironclad. Later in the 60s, Elvis began to push back a little bit, but with regard to many of the musicals that he made during the period that you talk about here in the book, Elvis more or less went along.
Yeah, the Colonel had two major contracts. There was with independent producer Hal Wallace, who worked out of Paramount, and then they signed a picture deal with MGM I believe in '62. And the Colonel's goal was to have Elvis doing 2 or 3 pictures a year to keep the money rolling. And he really didn't care about the scripts. You know, as long as Elvis sang, they were more interested in the songs, really, than the actual scripts. And what's interesting to learn, too, is with the actresses who were played against him, nobody tested with Elvis. They would test by themselves. The producers and directors would guess if they would have any chemistry with Elvis. And most of them, all of them really, first met Elvis on the first day of filming on the soundstage. He never, ever tested with any of his leading ladies to see if they were a good match with him.
Now, that wasn't necessarily aloofness on Elvis's part, at least that's the impression I got. It was just more a matter of practical because when he wasn't on the set, he was in the studio or he was splitting time between Graceland and his home in Beverly Hills and just being in demand as Elvis was at the time.
Exactly. Yes, it wasn't Elvis because nobody I interviewed ever had a bad thing to say about Elvis. Pretty much, he was a Southern gentleman to everyone, male and female.
Yes. That is consistent with many of the people that I've talked to who knew Elvis. So that is certainly consistent. You mentioned Blue Hawaii. Blue Hawaii was actually filmed on location in Hawaii, but one of the other characteristics of the Elvis film that you talk about in Talking 60s Drive-In Movies is that the studios, in some cases, instead of flying him out to an exotic location, they would take advantage of the many sets on the MGM backlot, and therefore, which made the movies less expensive to make. But surprisingly enough, even though these were made on the cheap, many of these movies were among the most popular among Elvis fans of that era. Why do you think that's so?
Well, they stopped going on location due to Sam Katzman. Viva Las Vegas, they did shoot on location in Vegas with Ann Margaret. And then Katzman was assigned Kissing Cousins, and it was supposed to be set in the Ozark Mountains, and there was no way they were going to shoot there. So they did most of it on the back lot and some exteriors, I think around somewhere in the mountains of Southern California. And again, pretty girls, lots of songs, and it was another big hit. And MGM realized, well, we can save a lot of money, but without going on location and still bring in the fans. And I think those movies like Kissing Cousins, Girl Happy, Harem Scarum, that were all done, quote-unquote, on the cheap, were popular because he was surrounded by young actors and actresses that were popular with the teenagers at the time. You know, they had Shelley Fabares, Diane McBain, Deborah Wally, Jimmy Hawkins, Joby Baker, and they knew who to surround Elvis with to attract the young people at the time. And again, you know, and Elvis, of course, was the main attraction, and he sang a lot of songs, and the fans just kept coming.
We're talking to Tom Lisanti. Tom's latest book, Talking 60s Drive-In Movies, is a collection of profiles, interviews, and tributes about actors and films that were particularly popular among drive-in moviegoers during the 1960s. Tom's book includes a detailed look at the evolution of the quote-unquote Elvis film, with a particular focus on the musicals that the King made for MGM between 1964 and 1967, including recollections from many of Elvis's leading ladies and co-stars, including Shelley Fabares, Nancy Czar, Arlene Charles, Gail Gerber, Christopher Reardon, and Irene Sue. Talking 60s Drive-In Movies is available through Bear Manor Media as well as Amazon.com and wherever books are sold online. Tom Lisanti blogs at 60scinema.com. You can also find him on Facebook and on Twitter. You mentioned Viva Las Vegas. Viva Las Vegas, one of Elvis's most successful movies of the 1960s, particularly the period that you focus on in Talking 60s Drive-In Movies. It was also an unusual movie in two respects, one of which you touched on. Besides filming on location in Las Vegas, it had a lot bigger budget than most of Elvis's movies throughout the 60s. And also the performance of Anne Margaret, who was, as you point out, she was the first, if not the only, actress who received above the title billing along with Elvis. And yet, what I found surprising, Tom, is that you say the movie has not aged well.
Yeah, well, that's my personal opinion. I mean, it's not one of my favorites. I think the story is corny. I mean, the musical numbers are fantastic. Yeah. I mean, Elvis and Anne Margaret are really great together. But it's a movie that doesn't surround him with a lot of young supporting people that I like and I write about. Because with I'm sure between Elvis and Anne Margaret, they ate up most of the budget when it came to the actors. So that's one of the things I don't like about it. However, the Colonel, believe it or not, despite all the money it made, the Colonel felt that George Sidney, the director, favored Anne Margaret throughout the movie in terms of camera time and shooting with the angles, giving her better close-ups. And when MGM decided to do Girl Happy following this, with Joe Pasternak producing, they wanted Anne Margaret, and the Colonel was like, no way was he going to allow anyone to her stature to work with Elvis again, because he felt that she took away some of the attention off of Elvis. So he immediately nixed Anne Margaret for Girl Happy, and then they settled on Shelley Fabares, who just signed a picture deal with MGM, and who could sing, though she felt her voice is not very good.
How did Elvis feel about Anne Margaret, or did he care one way or another who his leading lady was?
You know, supposedly they had a romance during Viva Las Vegas. Christopher Reardon, who I interviewed in the book, who worked on it, couldn't confirm that. He did say they worked really well together. I know he loved Shelley Fabares, and she came back 2 more times as his leading lady. I know Christopher Reardon, who was a dancer, when Elvis found out he was a single dad, he specifically told his guys to ask for him. So Christopher Reardon danced in about 7 Elvis movies because Elvis liked him, and he wanted to help him out because he knew he was struggling raising a son by himself. So that shows, like, when Elvis liked you, you came back. Gail Gerber was in 2 Elvis movies. She was invited back. Jimmy Hawkins, Chris Noel, Marianne Mobley. So when Elvis liked you and they knew that you were going to work well together, a lot of these people did 2 or 3 movies with Elvis. Arlene Charles did 4 because he liked to be surrounded by people he knew and he trusted. So it made him comfortable on the set. And that's why, according to the people I interviewed, he had his entourage. Basically, they were there to keep him from being bored.
Yeah.
And because shooting a movie, there's a lot of downtime.
Plus, it also goes back to one of the points we made earlier that during that particular stretch of his career, he more or less acceded to what Colonel Parker said. So if Parker put the kibosh on and Anne Margaret doing another movie with him, either Elvis didn't know about it or Elvis kind of went along.
Exactly. And actually, there's a quote attributed to Elvis. I don't know if it was regarding Tickle Me or Harum Scarum, but supposedly he said, that script was pretty funny. I have to read it sometime. And it goes to show that, he just went, did his scenes. I don't think he, really went to read a whole script and said, I'll do this, I'm going to do that. He relied on the Colonel Parker. And that's why the quality of his movies weren't up to par. And he could have, done better.
We're talking to Tom Lisanti. Tom's latest book, Talking 60s Drive-In Movies, includes a detailed look at the evolution of the quote-unquote Elvis film, with a particular focus on the musicals that the King made for MGM between 1964 and 1967. Talking 60s Drive-In Movies is available through Bear Manor Media as well as Amazon.com and wherever books are sold online. Tom Lisanti blogs at 60scinema.com. You can also find him on Facebook and on Twitter. You mentioned Girl Happy a few minutes ago. Many of the people that you talked to in Talking 60s Drive-In Movies, many of them pointed to Girl Happy as one of Elvis's best movies of the mid-1960s, as well as one of their particular favorite Elvis movies that they worked on. Why do you think Girl Happy is so popular among Elvis actors?
Well, it had a different director. Boris Sagal came in to direct. Most of Elvis's movies were directed by Norman Taurog, who was, an Academy Award winner from, I think he won for Skippy back in the 30s. But he sort of was more, I don't want to say pedestrian, but, he worked with Elvis a lot, and he didn't really try to stretch the movies. He just followed the formula. I think Boris Sagal had a good script, and the movie was a combination of Where the Boys Are and the Beach Party movies that were starting to be popular at the time with Frankie and Annette. So he had a great premise there to work with. And again, the cast is just, chock full of, a lot of promising young actors at the time. Shelley Fabre, Marianne Mobley, Gail Gerber, Chris Noel, Lynn Edgington, Laurie Williams is in it, Jimmy Hawkins, Joey Baker. I mean, it goes on. And all these people are very popular with the young people. Songs are good. Again, it's not filmed on location. They didn't go to Florida. They filmed the beach scenes in Santa Monica Beach. But it just all gelled, and it grossed over $3 million. It was probably the third or fourth highest grossing movie at the time. It came out in 1965 in the winter, so it was a perfect movie for people trying to escape the snow and the sleet to go see, and it was just a big hit. And like I said, everybody who worked in that movie loved working with Elvis, and I think he was at the top of his game at that point.
A couple of more questions. One of the interesting things I learned in your book, Tom, particularly the chapter on Elvis movies from 64 to 67, has to do with the movie Spin Out. Reportedly, Tippi Hedren was reportedly one of the leads in Spin Out. Now, you referenced Diane Bain as saying in her memoir that Tippi Hedren wanted more money, and that put the kibosh on her making the film. But I was thinking about this, and I wanted your take on this. If what you say about Colonel Parker was true, and by all accounts, let's just say it is, that after Viva Las Vegas, Parker did not want a strong actress playing opposite Elvis, I would think that's probably the real reason why Tippi got the kibosh, assuming she was in consideration at all for Spin Out.
Possibly, I don't think Tippi Hedren was the greatest actress.
Yeah, but where I'm getting at is she was a strong person off camera as well. So
yeah, except though I think it was more music. I mean, none of those Deborah Walley, Shelley Fabre, and Diane McBain had no musical numbers in that. I think it was more when the leading lady sang and danced. I think that's where he was more afraid of. For instance, Paradise Hawaiian Style, for the female lead with Hal Wallace, they reached out. Well, they looked to reach out to Sandra Dee, Carol Lindley, Pamela Tiffin, Tuesday Wells, Yvette Lemieux for the female lead, but their price, they were asking too much money. $50,000 to $250,000 was their price range. And like I said, with these Elvis movies, as the 60s went on, the budgets got smaller and smaller, and they couldn't afford the quote-unquote bigger names at the time. So that's why Paradise Hawaiian Style has Susanna Lee as the female lead. You know, she just did one movie for Elvis, not Elvis, for Hal Wallace, Boeing, and obviously they got her on the cheap. So I think in the terms of Colonel Parker with the Anne Margaret situation, I think it was more of the singing and dancing. Except though, they did sneak in Nancy Sinatra in Speedway, who got, equal billing with Elvis.
Final question for now. Do you have a favorite Elvis movie from that period?
Yeah, my favorite was probably a tie between Girl Happy, which we talked about, and Paradise Hawaiian Style, where Elvis is a pilot and he starts the helicopter business with James Shiketa, and they try to draw up business, and he uses his girlfriends, Irene Sue, Julie Parrish, and Mariana Hill, and Linda Wong, to try to get customers. And I kind of like that one. It's beautifully filmed all over Hawaii. The songs are really nice. The production values are top-notch. And that's probably my tied with Girl Happy.
Tom Lisanti's latest book is Talkin' 60s Drive-In Movies, and it includes a detailed look at the evolution of the Elvis film, with a particular focus on the musicals that Elvis made for MGM between 1964 and 1967. Talkin' 60s Drive-In Movies is available through Bear Manor Media, as well as Amazon.com and wherever books are sold online. Tom, there's a lot more that you talk about in your book. We'll have you back in a few weeks, and we'll have another conversation.
Okay, thanks, Ed.
Michael Dante will join us when we come back as we continue our special program dedicated to Elvis Presley on the 40th anniversary of his passing. Then we will replay our conversation from earlier this year with Steve Bender, producer and director of the 1968 Elvis Comeback Special. All that more coming up during hour number 2 of TV Confidential. Stay with us. If you've listened to TV Confidential and like what you've heard, please consider supporting our efforts by becoming a patron of our show through Patreon. How does Patreon work? Patrons agree to make a small donation to their favorite content creators every time they release new content. In exchange, we continue to provide new content while offering you rewards in return. In a way, it's like giving a tip, plus it provides value for value. So if you liked this week's guest or learned something about your favorite show that you did not know before, please consider supporting our efforts for as little as $1 a month. If you can afford more than $1 a month, you can donate at that level as well and receive some cool rewards. For just $5 a month, for example, you can download up to 6 programs from the TV Confidential archive store absolutely free. For $10 a month, you will receive a sneak preview of our guest interview every week before anyone else hears it. For more information, go to patreon.com/TV Confidential or click the Patreon button on the homepage at tvconfidential.net.
Accredited by Guinness World Records, welcome to Archival Television Audio Incorporated, a peerless TV soundtrack archive, preserving the audio from television's first 3 decades, the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, the golden and silver age of television.
For more information, go to atvaudio.com. Ed Robertson here to tell you how you can get a free first ride with Uber, the mobile app that connects you with the ride at the touch of a button in just a matter of minutes. Uber has drivers in cities across the country and around the world, while payment is seamless and cashless. To download the app, go to uber.com and enter the promo code TV Confidential, all one word, and you will receive a free first ride up to $20. To sign up directly with the promo code included, go to get.uber.com/go/TV Confidential, get.uber.com/go/TV Confidential.
This portion of TV Confidential is brought to us by our friends at Front Porch Realty Group, the community of realtors in the Northern Bay area of California that is committed to finding the solution that is best for their clients. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or looking to sell or lease your property in Northern California, call 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com for more information on how they can help you.
Hi, this is Dawn Wells. Guess what we're listening to? TV Confidential.
Ed Roberts with a reminder that we will replay our conversation with Steve Binder later on in this hour. Steve Binder, Emmy Award-winning producer and director of such iconic TV variety specials as the 1968 Elvis Comeback Special. We hope you'll stay tuned for that. In the meantime, you might recall that Michael Dante joined us a few weeks back to talk about Winterhawk's Land, the original novella he wrote as a sequel to the iconic 1975 Western Winterhawk. While we had him on the phone, Michael also shared a story about his friendship with Elvis Presley that we decided to save as part of our program tonight. Michael co-starred with Elvis Presley and Charles Bronson in the 1962 movie Kid Galahad. As we pick up the conversation, Michael is telling us about a weekend excursion to Palm Springs that he went on with Elvis during a break in production on the movie.
Elvis and I did Kid Galahad, and we were up at Highway 74 in Idlewild, and a location filming the picture, and we had the weekend off. We finished, we shoot 6 days a week, and we were off Friday and Saturday and Sunday, according to our schedule. And Elvis said, Michael, we're going down to Palm Springs and with the guys, and I invited
Charles Bronson.
Yeah, right, to one of the other actors too, along with yourself, to enjoy the weekend. I've got a whole floor of rooms, and you'd be my guest. And he said, well, if you want to ride down with me in the limousine or take your own car, whatever. And I said, I'll ride down in the limousine with you, and where we could chat and so forth. Anyway, cut the chase. We're going down Highway 74. By the way, there was Charlie Bronson he invited.
Charles Bronson and Gig Young.
And Gig Young, right, exactly. So we went down, driving down, and you could see on a flat, on the right side was a big sign, Alpine Village. It was a real estate office, and it was a beautiful Alpine Village construction. Really nice. And it was a flat road, and there was a woman and the guy in the middle, just off to the side of the road, and then the hair was all gray. I said, God, there's two people in the world I know that have gray hair like that, and one is Jerry Vale, or that's Frank, a guy I know is an actor, and he sold real estate in Los Angeles, but could that be him here? Well, lo and behold, we pull up the getting closer. I said, EP, called Elvis. I said, EP, do you mind if we stop and talk to those people? He said, no. He said, do you mean you might? Yeah, I might know that guy's really familiar. So we stopped, and there was a beautiful lady he was talking to, and I said, oh, my God, it's Frank. And we opened the door, and I got out and said, Frank, what are you doing, son? He said, well, I sell real estate down here. My daughters want to go to college, and I'm working weekends over here, and they have some great properties here. These are all 1 acre plots, and the lady here is interested in buying one of the lots. So look over and I said, well, Frank, I'd like you to meet Elvis Presley. And now this woman was the biggest Elvis Presley fan you could imagine. She screamed like you can't believe. She was so thrilled, so happy, and Elvis couldn't have been more charming, nicer. And they were started a dialogue, and I said to Frank, Frank, what are you selling? Tell me about what you're doing. He said, well, those lots across the street, they're 1 acre, and there's a row of them. And I said, well, gee, how much are they? So he said, oh, they're $6,000 an acre and so forth. And I said, well, gee, what's that? Oh, wow. There was one lot, it said, Unit 1, Lot 637. I said, Frank, I don't know what it is, but I'll buy that lot. I want that lot 637, Unit 1. He said, are you kidding? I said, what? How long? Why did it take you so long? I said, I was born, I was raised, and my house number was 637.
In Stamford, Connecticut.
In Stamford, Connecticut. And I said, you see, that's a good luck omen. I want to buy that lot and make all the arrangements. And I was living in Beverly Hills at the time. I said, Frank, we'll talk over the phone. We had each other's phone number, and bring the contract and make the deal, and we'll go from there. He said, absolutely, great. In the meantime, they were talking, and Elvis couldn't have been nicer to her, and signed her. She had a contract paper of the real estate transaction there. She had him sign the back of it, and off we went, and made her the happiest human being on the face of the earth. And I said to EP, we're driving down the hill, and he said, Michael, what did you do? I said, I bought that lot because it's the only one that had a sign on it, Unit 1, Lot 637. And I said, that's the number of the house I grew up on. It was at my house in Stamford, Connecticut. He said, well, I'll be darned. He said, well, he had a little stammer, you know, and he said, well, how are you going to pay for it? What kind of arrangements did you make? I said, well, I'll make monthly payments. And he made a gesture. He said, well, look, if you have any problem, he said, I'll pay for it, and then you pay me back another time. Oh, I said, gee, AP, thank you so much. But, no, it's okay. I'm fine. I'll be okay. I'll be able to pay for it. But he made a gesture to pay for it. And, of course, we went down and spent the weekend, had a wonderful time there in Palm Springs. It was in Palm Springs. It was at the Howard Manor Hotel, the famous Howard Manor at the time. And that was many years ago. That was in the 60s. So that was there were many things that Elvis Presley was a really wonderful guy, well-mannered. Everything was yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. He was always on time, always knew his dialogue. He was a good athlete. We did all the fight stuff ourselves in the picture. No stuntmen. Everything we did ourselves. And if I may continue, Ed, we were doing a routine at one time, and we were doing it by the numbers. Left jab, right cross, and hook out. Well, he did the routine, and he threw an extra punch as I was taking the mouthpiece out of my mouth. And he cut my mouth.
Ouch. Ouch.
And I was bleeding, it was bleeding, and he was so apologetic. He was, oh, my God, I'm sorry. Gee, he must have apologized 10 times. I said, Elvis, I've been hit before. Don't worry. I've boxed before, and I know what that's all about. So, but he was that kind of a guy. And the last time we had spent some time together was just before he had in his contract he had to be home before Christmas. Christmas Eve, spend Christmas Eve in Memphis, his home. And I was doing it was a pickup scene I had to do, a close-up, and he had been finished, and he was ready to go back to, I think it was the 22nd or 23rd of December, and he was just ready to go catch a plane and go back to Memphis. And I hear off stage, Michael. I said, yeah. Oh, EP, yeah. He said, you got a minute? He said, I want to talk to you a minute. Okay? So I said, sure, EP. So he said, I got some Christmas gifts I'd like you to have. And he said, here, and it was all wrapped up, 2 gifts wrapped up. And he said, enjoy it, Merry Christmas. He said, I really enjoyed working with you. It's a pleasure, and we'll see each other soon. He said, I'll see you at the studio because we had some interiors left to do at Paramount. So he said, I'll see you after the holidays, which we did. But when I got home, and I didn't open them until Christmas. It was a couple of days later. And I opened them up, and he had all his was it the 26 or 36, the big albums. All those big albums.
Yeah, the LPs, yeah.
Yeah, the LPs. I had all the LPs, and then the other one was a rectangular box with a nice bow on it and a nice card, and I opened it up. It was a clock radio, which I still have in my house.
Wow.
Yeah, after all these years, he gave me a clock radio, and he said, and a nice note, "Thank you, Michael. It was a pleasure working with you." EP. So these are the kind of things, and we in between shots, we threw the football. He loved football.
He loved touch football.
Oh yeah, and he loved to play, and he was a good athlete.
Yeah,
very good athlete. And we would toss the ball in between shots until the director said, "Okay, let's go." And then on the weekends, he had his group. By the way, those guys were all very nice guys to be around, and they were all good athletes. Red West and a whole bunch of those fellows, they were good athletes. And we played touch football, and we played in a park there by Coldwater Canyon. There's in Beverly Hills, there's a fire station, and adjacent to the fire station there was a lot, a nice lot, in a private area. So we would gather there on a Sunday, usually on a Sunday, or if we weren't working on Saturday, we'd gather Saturday and Sunday and play touch football. But the touch football got to be blocking, and all of a sudden guys were bringing pads and helmets, and that was the end of my touch football with Elvis and the gang, because they would hit and never complain. Elvis, you hit him as hard as you could.
Yeah.
Well, look out, because the next time he's going to hit you as hard as he could. Good athlete and good and fair, and never complained. None of them would ever whine or complain about getting hit hard or anything. They played for keeps, and they were terrific.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it until they got a little bit
little bit too rough. But Elvis
had a great time. They were really nice people to be around.
Very nice people to be around. Elvis was a much better actor than people give him credit for, and I believe Kid Galahad was one of his favorite movies to make because it gave him a chance to do something different.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Because he said to me one day, he said, Michael, I want to do the things you do. You have a variety of characters. Do a western, you play a gangster, you play a nice guy, and a romantic lead, and so forth. He said, I'm so tired. He said, I walk 2 steps, I sing a song, get in the car, and it's a convertible. Once we're in the car, I sing the song, finish the song, and then 2 frames later, I'm singing another song. He said, I want to do some serious things. And he loved westerns. He loved westerns, and he said, and I said, Elvis, I have a western story that I would like to do one of these days. It's a western another western I have called Cain's Woman, and his right-hand man Joe Esposito became his manager after the colonel left, and I had this script for a long time, and Elvis said, well, when the right time, let's see. He said, I'd like to read it and see what you have to offer. So I ran into Joe Esposito, who lived in Beverly Hills many years after we did the picture, and he said, Michael, he remembered. He said, Michael, what did you do with that western that you talked to Elvis about, Elvis and me about? I said, well, I got it, and so forth. He said, well, let me have a copy. So I gave him a copy, and Elvis read it, and he said, when I get to lose some weight, he had put on a lot of weight at the time. He said, let's see, Joe said, let's see what we can do with this, but Elvis got to lose some weight. And, he never did, and shortly after that, he passed away. Yeah, we really lost a dear pal and wonderful talent, great, generous human being. He just left us too early, too soon.
Actor Michael Dante, remembering his friend Elvis Presley, with whom he co-starred in the 1962 movie Kid Galahad. Michael's novella Winterhawk's Land is available through bearmanormedia.com as well as amazon.com and wherever books are sold online. If you would like an autographed edition of Winterhawk's Land, you can contact Michael Dante directly through his website, michaeldanteway.com. We'll take a quick time out, then we'll replay our conversation with Steve Binder here on TV Confidential.
Buying or selling a home can be one of the most stressful things we'll ever do in life, but it doesn't have to be. And no one knows better than our friends at Front Porch Realty Group. They're a community of realtors serving the Northern Bay Area of California that cares about their clients as individuals first and foremost. Whether you're a first-time buyer or looking to lease or sell your property in the Bay Area, Front Porch Realty Group will help you through this important transition by providing you with the right information for your situation while lessening the pain. They also work with a network of realtors throughout California who provide the same high caliber of customer service. Call Front Porch Realty Group at 415-886-7411 for a realtor referral near you. You can also visit their website, frontporchrealtygroup.com, for more information on the services they provide, including upcoming workshops and seminars. For more information, call 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com. Front Porch Realty Group. They'll find the solution that works best for you.
Missed a show? We have more than 250 archived editions of TV Confidential available as digital downloads. For more information, go to shop.tvconfidential.net, shop.tvconfidential.net. Ed Robertson here to tell you how you can get a free first ride with Uber, the mobile app that connects you with the ride at the touch of a button in just a matter of minutes. Uber has drivers in cities across the country and around the world, while payment is seamless and cashless. To download the app, go to uber.com and enter the promo code TVConfidential, all one word, and you will receive a free first ride up to $20. To sign up directly with the promo code included, go to get.uber.com/go/TVConfidential, get.uber.com/go/TVConfidential.
Hi, this is Dan Castellaneta. You're listening to TV Confidential.
Ed Robertson welcoming you back to TV Confidential, radio talk show about television that is happy to welcome back Emmy Award-winning director and producer Steve Binder. Steve Binder, a fixture in the world of variety television for more than 5 decades. Steve, many credits as a director and producer include such iconic variety specials as Lucy in London, the historic Diana Ross in Central Park telecast, the 1968 Elvis comeback special, and The Tammy Show, which many consider to be the holy grail of rock and roll film. Steve Binder is also the co-author of an excellent book that provides an oral history of variety television from many of the people who brought it to us. We'll talk about that and more in just a second. First, Steve Binder, welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much, Ed. Pleasure to be back with you.
We were chatting before we started recording. This being the month of January as we record this conversation. It's a few days after what would have been Elvis's birthday. Plus, later this year, this calendar year 2017, will be the 40th anniversary of Elvis's death. So, as long as the King is on my mind, and certainly the mind of a lot of our listeners, I would like to ask you a couple of questions about the 68 special. How did you first become involved with that?
Well, it's a long story, and I'll try and make it as short as I can.
No. There are no restrictions. You tell it the way you want to tell it.
I just completed doing a television special for NBC with Petula Clark and Harry Belafonte. And the special ended up being very controversial because it was in variety television. It was the first time in network primetime television that a black and a white person physically touched each other. And that was a result of in the middle of singing a duet with Harry, Petula reached over and touched his forearm, and all hell broke loose with the sponsor's representative who said this can never be aired and so forth. So to make a long story short is Colonel Parker had made a deal with Tom Sarnoff, the head of NBC, in I guess 1967, and it was a case of where NBC was going to help finance Elvis's next movie, which I think turned out to be Change of Habit, Mary Tyler Moore. And what happened is that the Colonel made the deal with Sarnoff on his own without telling Elvis. And when he explained it to Elvis, the deal he made, one of the conditions was that Elvis had to do a television special. And Elvis balked. He didn't want to do television. He had, in his own words, he had told me that, he'd been out of even the record business for about 3 or 4 years, and he felt that his appearances, other than the Ed Sullivan Show, where he really exploded when CBS made the decision not to shoot him from the waist down, so the American public reacted like, what's going on down there?
Yeah.
And as a result, he became so popular and so hot that every television show wanted him, and he went on 2 of the biggest comedy shows in the United States at that time. One was with Milton Berle, and the other one was with Steve Allen. And they both kind of didn't get it as far as rock and roll and Elvis and so forth, so they made fun of him, basically. I think Steve put a hound dog in front of him while he was singing Hound Dog. Milton Berle got out the big powder puffs and so forth and put him in a comedy sketch. And as a result, Elvis said, I'm not comfortable doing television.
Yeah.
I really don't want to do it. As a result, the Colonel told NBC all this while that there was going to be no problem. And I got a call from what turned out to be a great executive producer for the special, Bob Finkel. And Bob called me. He was under contract to NBC at the time and said, look, we've got a contract, but we don't have the star. He doesn't want to do it. And we were hearing about your experience with Petula and Belafonte and decided maybe you're rebel enough and young enough to relate to Elvis, and maybe you can convince him to do it. So at that time, I had already signed a contract to do a motion picture with a very famous 1940s or 50s film producer, and I was well in my own head saying I wasn't going to do television anymore. I was going to focus my career on doing movies. And my partner at the time, Bones Howe, a great recording producer, we were producing exclusively The Fifth Dimension, The Association, Laura Nero, through their big hit records. So Bones had engineered once for Elvis, and he overheard the conversation with Finkel and myself, and he said, Steve, you got to do both. You got to do the movie and do Elvis. So call Finkel back and tell him that, if they can work out your schedule, you should do it, because I know Elvis, and you've never met him, and I think you guys would hit it off, like magic. So he's the one who convinced me to call Finkel back, and as fate stepped in, Walter Wanger, who was the producer of the film, suddenly died of a heart attack, so the entire film project fell through. So that left me wide open just to do the Elvis special, and then the comedy began, because I had to meet the Colonel first in order to get permission to meet with Elvis.
Yeah.
And I sat down. I was not a big Elvis fan in 1967, 68. I was amused by him. I saw him on Ed Sullivan, liked him, and then I kind of followed the publicity career that he had. And, I was a West Coast guy into the Beach Boys and Jan and Dean and The Fifth Dimension and so forth, and here was this kid from Memphis, Tennessee, and in my head, hey, maybe he's even a redneck. I mean, I know about Elvis Presley. So I insisted to Finkel that before I made any kind of commitment, I wanted to meet Elvis one-on-one. And it was fortuitous because for whatever reason, Colonel Parker agreed to let me meet him alone. And one afternoon, Elvis came to my office, and we were basically not talking about the television special, just talking about records. He saw our gold records on the wall with the Fifth Dimension and the Association and so forth. And so we were talking about music and how it had changed. And, by this time the Beatles had come to America, and Elvis thought in his head that he would be kind of irrelevant at this point in terms of rock and roll. And he just didn't feel the fans, after he had done some 20-some movies, had been isolated from doing any music appearances. He did no concerts or whatever. And he felt the audience might have passed him up with the English invasion and so forth. And so, in this meeting, I realized this is a guy I could really relate to. I liked him a lot the minute he stepped in. Finkel was complaining he would never call him by his first name, and he always referred to him as Mr. Finkel. Elvis walked into my office and said, "Hey, Steve." We walked into the back room where my office was, and we just had a great time talking about music and so forth and so on. And he said, "Television is not my turf." And I said, "Well, what is your turf?" And he said, "Making records." And I said, "Okay, then you make an album and I'll put pictures to it. How's that?" And later on, he told me that was the key to agreeing to do the special, because he felt comfortable with me. He just said, I don't have to worry about where the cameras are or the pictures or anything. I just kind of trust this guy. And what I didn't know is that years later, Priscilla told me that Elvis came home from that meeting saying, "I don't care what the Colonel says or wants me to do, I'm going with Binder. I like his ideas, I like him, and I just got a gut feeling that it's going to turn out well." And fortunately, for all of us, it did bring him back to his roots, and he did prove himself as the real king of rock and roll. And it opened up a whole new door for him. The tragedy is that after the special and the reaction and going to Las Vegas and breaking all kinds of records and so forth, I knew that Elvis, because he told me first person that he wanted to really not sing any songs he didn't believe in anymore, because a lot of the movie writers had written songs that he really kind of hated, but because it was part of the agreements that the Colonel made with the studios. He didn't want to do any more movies unless he really loved the script, and I said to him, "Elvis, instead of asking Colonel Parker asking for $1 million for you to star in a movie, why don't you ask him to pay a great director?" And at the time, Midnight Cowboy was out with Schlesinger as the director, and I said, "Why don't you call Schlesinger and offer him $1 million to put you in his next movie and star in it?" And he laughed, and unfortunately, none of that ever happened. Yeah. As you know, he ended up basically only performing in Las Vegas. And there's lots of stories and rumors about why he never left the United States, even though I knew he wanted to. I knew he when we finished the 68 special, Elvis was kind of reborn. He wanted to, he realized his career was back on track, and he wanted to explore new mountains, and unfortunately never had the opportunity to. And I've always said, I don't think Elvis died of drugs. I think he died of boredom. I don't think he ever wanted to end up every year being in Las Vegas. When I first saw him there, he was fantastic. He was every bit as good and exciting as when we did the special. And a year later, I saw him, and it was over. He wasn't even performing for the audiences, though the audiences never knew that. And he was kind of, performing for the musicians behind him. And I just knew he was bored out of his mind and wanted to go do some new things. So I was saddened by his death and by knowing that he never got to do what was inside of him that he wanted to do.
We're talking to Steve Binder. Steve is the co-author, along with Mary Beth Liedman, of Fade Up 26, The Movers and Shakers of Variety Television, an oral history of variety television as told by the voices of the men and women who were and are responsible for bringing these shows and these stars into our homes for the past 65-plus years. Among the luminaries that Steve and Mary Beth interviewed for Fade Up 26 include Lorne Michaels, Marty Pacetta, George Schlatter, Gil Cates, and Louis Horvitz. Fade Up 26, The Movers and Shakers of Variety Television, is available in hardcover through Kendall Hunt publishing.
And also Amazon. You can get it just about anywhere if you go to the internet.
Yeah, Amazon.com, wherever books are sold online. Fade Up 26, the movers and shakers of variety television. Steve Bender is one of the movers and shakers of variety television. He's spending a few minutes talking to us about Elvis, the 1968 comeback special, which is one of the topics that Steve talks about in Fade Up 26. A couple of things. One is, you mentioned that prior to meeting Elvis, you were not necessarily a connoisseur of his music. You had other interests. I'm just thinking aloud, Steve, as a filmmaker, as a director, that was probably a good thing because you came into the production with a fresh perspective, and as opposed to a fan perspective. I mean, I know you've been in the business long enough. That was never a problem with you. But a lot of times when you approach something fresh, you will find things that you may not have thought about had you necessarily been a fan. Does that make sense?
I think it's a good analysis, Ed. One of the things that I made a commitment to myself when I became a director is that the real star of whatever project was the talent. And I notice myself, if I'm watching a television variety special especially, and I'm noticing the camera work and the director's work and so forth, then, in my opinion, that's not the way to watch television. You don't want to even think about, there's a director, there are cameras, there's a crew of 100+ people and so forth. You want to think of just focusing on the talent performing. So it was a case of when I met Elvis, and Colonel had laid down the law to begin with that this was going to be a Christmas special, even though we were shooting, I think, in the middle of summer.
Yeah.
It was NBC had scheduled it for airing in December of '68, and the Colonel insisted that it be 26 Christmas songs, and Elvis would say hello, and then at the end of the show he'd say goodbye, and hit. And when I met Colonel Parker, I thought I failed the audition, to be honest with you, because I knew I wasn't going to do that kind of a show. Mm-hmm. I said to him, why don't you let, at the time, Andy Williams or Perry Como or Bing Crosby or those kind of guys from the 50s and early 60s, basically they annually do their Christmas specials and let them do it. But Elvis is really special and shouldn't be doing that show. I never expressed it at the time to Colonel Parker. I just kept my mouth shut. But next thing I know, I got to my office, and there was already a message from Finkel saying, I don't know what you did to convince the Colonel, but he's going to let Elvis meet you one-on-one at your office tomorrow. So that's how that haul laid down. And Elvis was actually the third of a trilogy of specials when I got into that end of the business. The first one was with the star of a Broadway show called Hallelujah Baby, mm-hmm. Who had earned her reputation in television with the Mitch Miller Show, which was kind of a sing-along format. Mm-hmm. And Leslie Uggams became the first project that I did when I assembled my behind-the-scenes crew of, writers and set designers and so forth. And I obviously picked people I'd worked with in my previous shows, from Billy Goldenberg, who I'd worked with on Hullabaloo, Gene McAvoy, who was the art director on Elvis, also on Hullabaloo, and I'd worked with Chris Beard and Alan Bly. Alan was my head writer on the Tula Belafonte special with, I guess you'd recognize his partner at the time, Mason Williams, mm-hmm. who wrote
Classical Gasp,
and very artistic. They were the writers of Petula and Harry, and then Alan was the head writer with Chris Beard on the Elvis special. Mm-hmm. So I already had a kind of a family of artists behind the scenes, and so we were, by the time we got to Elvis, was the third special, we were a well-oiled machine. I mean, we not only were compatible, but in those days when you used to do a television special, you used to create it from scratch, basically, and just sit in a room and say, okay, we've got Elvis, what do we do with him? and then everybody would pitch ideas. We forgot our titles and salaries and everything else, and just were focusing on what would make a great special. And so it was really a case of when Alan and Chris went next door to our offices to Tower Records and bought every Elvis album, 45, 78 if they could find them, anything they could find with Elvis's name on it, and brought them back to the office and then start pouring through them, coming up with ideas for the format of the special, minus the improv, which turned out to be the most important part of the whole special, which was just another story unto itself. But it was really a case of when Elvis heard what our concept was, and Alan and Chris are the ones who pitched it to him, he loved it. I mean, he said to me, I said, do you want any changes or anything you don't like about it? He said, no, I love every bit of it. And it made me nervous because I don't think I ever worked with a star who didn't put their 2 cents in terms of the original concept. And but he was 100% on board. And again, I didn't know that Colonel Parker basically had lost his power over Elvis in this, because I was expecting, when the Colonel realized what I was doing, probably would have fired me on the spot. But I kept wondering, why aren't I being fired? Because I know he was so adamant about it being a Christmas special, but I never knew what had happened behind the scenes where Elvis told the Colonel, I don't care what you say, I'm going with Binder. So that turned out to be one of the great, for me personally, it's an experience I'll never forget my entire life.
We're talking to Steve Binder, Emmy Award-winning producer and director of such iconic variety specials as Lucy in London, The Tammy Show, and the 1968 Elvis Comeback Special. Steve is also the co-author, along with Mary Beth Liedman, of Fade Up 26, the movers and shakers of variety television. Fade Up 26 is available both in hardcover and as an ebook through Kendall Hunt Publishing. You can find Fade Up 26 at Amazon.com and wherever books are sold online. We'll continue our conversation with Steve after this quick time out here on TV Confidential. Missed a show? We have more than 250 archived editions of TV Confidential available as digital downloads. For more information, go to shop.tvconfidential.net, shop.tvconfidential.net.
Story Salon is Los Angeles' longest-running storytelling venue. We have live shows every Wednesday in Studio City, as well as solo shows, podcasts, CDs, and several books. Los Angeles Daily News calls Story Salon Gemstones of Narrative. Something new, funny, astonishing. Sunset Magazine says, tales tall, tragic, and tantalizing. All of this makes Story Salon one of the most eclectic entertainment experiences available. You can learn more about us by going to our Facebook page or by visiting our website at www.storysalon.com.
Ed Robertson here to tell you how you can get a free first ride with Uber, the mobile app that connects you with the ride at the touch of a button in just a matter of minutes. Uber has drivers in cities across the country and around the world, while payment is seamless and cashless. To download the app, go to uber.com and enter the promo code TVConfidential, all one word, and you will receive a free first ride up to $20. To sign up directly with the promo code included, go to get.uber.com/go/TV Confidential, get.uber.com/go/TV Confidential. The Perpetual Paycheck. 5 secrets to getting a job, keeping a job, and earning income for life in the loyalty-free workplace. The Perpetual Paycheck, now available as an audiobook through audible.com, iTunes, and Amazon.com. If you've listened to TV Confidential and like what you've heard, please consider supporting our efforts by becoming a patron of our show through Patreon. It's easy to do and costs as little as $1 a month. For more information, go to patreon.com/TV Confidential or click the Patreon button on the home page at tvconfidential.net. Ed Robertson, along with our friend Donna Allen Figueroa, who I understand has a new book out.
Yes, it's entitled Fall Again Beginnings. It's the first part of a 4-part contemporary romantic series set against the background of working actors.
Something that you know a thing or two
well,
about.
You write what you know, and I have been working in the business for several years.
It is not necessarily autobiographical, but it's based on...
Sure, many of the experiences that the actors in my book have, many have happened to me, many have happened to friends of mine. It's not, if you're looking for Valley of the Dolls, it's not, it's grounded in reality.
It is grounded in reality, and it's the first in a series.
Yes.
Called the Fall Again series.
Fall Again.
Which is available as a paperback as well as an ebook and in Kindle at fallagainseries.com.
Hi, this is Connie Stevens. You're listening to TV Confidential.
There must be lights burning brighter somewhere. Got to be birds flying higher in a sky more blue.
Ed Robertson, author, guest Steve Bender, Emmy Award-winning producer and director of such iconic variety specials as Lucy in London, The Tammy Show, and the 1968 Elvis comeback special. Steve is also the co-author, along with Mary Beth Liedman, of Fade Up 26, The Movers and Shakers of Variety Television, an oral history of variety television as told by 26 award-winning variety show producers and directors. Fade Up 26, The Movers and Shakers of Variety Television, is available both in hardcover and as an ebook through Kendall Hunt Publishing. You can find Fade Up 26 at Amazon.com and wherever books are sold online. You mentioned the improv session, the jam session, which is one of the most iconic parts of the special, as you just said. And just from what I know about Elvis, prior to that, when he performed live, he pretty much, kept to himself. He didn't engage himself with others. He didn't engage himself with the audience. But he started doing that in the 70s. That's from what I know about when he performed live in the 70s. He did that all the time, with audience. Do you think he took what he learned as a result from working with you and worked that into his live act later?
Well, fortunately for me and everybody else throughout the world, Elvis made the decision himself when we filmed or videotaped the special at NBC in Burbank. He decided he wanted to live there from day one until we finished it, and not spend the hour or two driving back and forth to his home in Beverly Hills. Mm-hmm. And that was fortuitous because what happened is he had all this spare time on his hands after rehearsals and tapings and so forth, and he'd go into what became his dressing room living quarters. There was a piano in there, and he'd sit there with whoever happened to be hanging out at the television station late at night, etc. And he'd go into his dressing room and his living quarters and start jamming until sometimes 3, 4 in the morning, and we'd all pile in there. And what I was able to eventually capture on tape was something that he was doing every single day living at NBC. And I insisted that, I knew it was like looking through a keyhole. It's something you're not supposed to be looking to see. This was magic, and it was something I said, I've got to get this on tape. And when I went to Colonel Parker and told him what my plan was, he really became infuriated and said, absolutely not. No cameras in the dressing room. You can't even bring audio tape in there and so forth. And so I just kept hounding him while I was shooting the formatted show with all the big production numbers and so forth. And I guess in a moment of weakness or whatever, he finally came to me and said, okay, this is what I'll let you do. I'll let you recreate it on stage if you want to, but I won't guarantee it'll make the air. It may not get into the show if I don't like it. So I jumped on that, and immediately, even though my budget was already blown by that time, we've got to do this, and then it goes on because the Colonel tried to sabotage it. The time that I actually did it, he was hoping to. He ended up with, it's another story where he got all the tickets to the improv jam sessions, and promising that he was going to fly an airplane in from Memphis with all these bouffant blonde hairdo, blue-eyed girls who were fanatical fans of Elvis, and it was all baloney. He never had that intention, and as a result, I was driving out of the lot at NBC the day before we were to tape this, and one of the guards said, "Hey, Steve, do you need any tickets for tomorrow's event with Elvis?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And there, was a stack of the tickets, and I said, "Where'd you get these?" And he said, "Oh, some bald-headed guy came by and handed them to me and said, just pass them out as people are driving in and out of the lot at NBC." And so the morning of the taping, I had ordered extra security and the public relations people and the pages and so forth to be welcoming the crowd, because I thought they'd be lined up around the blocks in Burbank at NBC. And I got there first thing in the morning of the taping, and the head of the NBC guest relations came to me and said, "We're in deep trouble. We've only got about 10 people standing out in line here." And so we spent all morning long, Bones, myself, a lot of the crew and so forth, calling people, asking them to come see Elvis taping. And we even sent a person there was a iconic kind of drive-in restaurant in California at the time called Bob's Big Boy. Mm-hmm. They had that very famous statue out in front of their drive-in with Bob with the curly hair
and the freckles and a big hamburger.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's.
We went there and asked people who were actually in their cars eating lunch or late breakfast, asking them to come over to NBC to watch Elvis, and we kind of pulled this group together. Because before then, we'd invited nobody, and were told by Colonel Parker, since he had all the tickets, that we couldn't even have any of the NBC executives or the crew or their girlfriends or wives or anybody there. He was in total control, which unfortunately I gave him. And so we were lucky to even get it. And then when I was ready to do it, Elvis kind of got cold feet and wanted to back out. And he called me to while we had the audience being warmed up for him, we had a local radio DJ there, and we also had Bob Finkel talking to the audience. And I could hear this conversation going on stage, and I got a call that I had to meet Elvis in the makeup room. And I went in there, and there were a group of people in there aside from Elvis, and he asked everybody to leave for a few minutes so he could meet with me alone. So everybody left, and he said, "Steve, I can't do it." I said, "What do you mean you can't do it?" He said, "I don't remember anything that happened in the dressing room. I don't remember any of the songs I sang. I don't remember any of the stories we told or anything." So I grabbed a piece of 8x10 paper with a pencil and a blank sheet and wrote down what I remembered, the songs going up, going down, and all the old songs and so forth, and some of the stories he told about being at the Pan Pacific Auditorium in California, where the Vice Squad was there, making sure he wasn't doing any vulgar things below the waist and so forth. And so it was a case of where when I went to the control room and I said, "Elvis, I haven't asked you to do anything that you didn't want to do on this special. This is one time where you've got to go out there. I don't care if you just say hello to the audience, goodbye to the audience. I don't have anything to say or sing, but you've got to get out there." And I left. I turned my back on him. I walked out of the makeup room, went up to the control room, and getting ready to roll the videotape, not knowing if Elvis was going to go out there or not. I didn't get a definitive answer from him. And when I went up in the control booth, the only time I knew he came back was when one of the cameramen showed me his monitor, and there was Elvis climbing up the stage steps and getting ready to perform. And it was amazing, because once he was up there, he forgot about cameras, he forgot about television specials, he forgot about everything. He got so into it, I almost had to get the hook to get him off. We did 2 hours of it.
Yeah.
And, so it was pretty fantastic. And that, to me, was the real gold and the magic of the special. I mean, he was back. I mean, he didn't have to prove himself to anybody and all the critics. The amazing thing about Elvis is I don't know any other performer in the world that could have gone on stage cold after being absent from performing in front of an audience for a good maybe 10 years when he started doing all those movies, etc., and was up to speed in 5 minutes. I mean, for me, watching the special back, and I've seen it obviously several times, what was magic for me was watching a man rediscover himself.
Yeah.
And that was it. You could see it in his face, his body language. I mean, all of a sudden he was back to being a kid again and doing what he loved to do.
We're talking to Steve Binder. Steve is the co-author, along with Mary Beth Liedman, of Fade Up 26, The Movers and Shakers of Variety Television, an oral history of variety television as told by the voices of the men and women who were and are responsible for bringing these shows and these stars into our homes for the past 65-plus years. Fade Up 26, The Movers and Shakers of Variety Television, is available wherever books are sold, online through Kendall Hill Publishing. In our previous segment, we talked about the improv session, Steve. Another iconic moment is the final song performed in the special, If I Can Dream. Tell us the story about that.
Well, I wanted the American public, the world for that matter, to really know who Elvis was, not just the performer.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never seen him other than under a completely controlled environment, like making movies. You know, if he did television, it was very predictable what he was going to be doing. And I because I had spent so much time with him and with our little behind-the-scenes family, we got to really know him. We were together when Bobby Kennedy was assassinated at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. We happened to be rehearsing at my offices at the time and heard this big commotion in one of the other offices where the television was on. So we walked into the room, and Kennedy had just been assassinated, and we spent all night talking about the assassinations of Martin Luther King, of John Kennedy, and so forth and so on. And so it was really a case of, you know, I knew Elvis, aside from his great sense of humor, there was a real human person with a lot of feeling and humanity in him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just come off this incident of basic racism on the Petula Clark Harry Belafonte special, where somebody objected to a black and a white person touching. And it was a case of where, in the Elvis special, we were a United Nations production. I mean, we had a Puerto Rican choreographer, a black choreographer. We had a totally mixed ethnic dance company, extras, actors, and so forth. The Blossoms, three great black background singers who were known as the best studio singers on the West Coast, and did so many, many hit records. And they were with him when he was doing his big gospel production number, etc. And I didn't see any prejudice, racism, anything coming from Elvis. I just saw a compassionate human being who loved everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody loved him back. And so it was really a case of I wanted the public to get to know him in the closing song. The Colonel all the while was pressing for a Christmas song. I said, everybody's going to do a Christmas song at the end of their show in December. I don't want to do that with Elvis. So secretly, I told Billy Goldenberg, our musical director, and Earl Brown, our vocal director, to come up with a song, an original song, incorporating all the feelings we had about Elvis. And, you know, what happened was I got a call one evening, a few days later, from Earl Brown saying, Steve, I think we nailed it. And so can you meet us at the studio really early and we'll play it for you. So I met him first thing in the morning, got up really early, drove out to Burbank, and we went into Elvis's dressing room before Elvis had gone to the bathroom or something. He was not in his dressing room. Nobody was there. And so they sat down at the piano, took out a lead sheet with If I Can Dream, Billy Goldenberg, Earl Brown, lyrics and music, and played it for Elvis. And played it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I loved it. I approved it. And then when Elvis came in, I said, Elvis, I think we've got the closing song. So we go into by the piano, and Earl, with a great voice, sings the lyrics. Billy plays a phenomenal piano, and he played the music behind Earl. They sang it, and I loved it. And so when Elvis was there, I said, Elvis, you got to hear this song. I think this is the closing song. And basically, you know, If I Can Dream of a Better World, where everybody gets along and so forth. The lyrics said what Elvis was kind of, emoting through the entire rehearsal and production.
Mm-hmm.
And so Elvis heard it, and he said, play it again. And I could hear the colonel, who had arrived by that time with all the RCA people and his entourage, and they were in the other room where the piano wasn't. And I could hear the colonel saying, "What's Binder doing? Never going to, over my dead body, is he ever going to get Elvis to sing this song?"
Yeah.
And then Elvis made them play it and sing it for about 3 or 4 times in a row, which was his style when he heard something new.
He was absorbing it.
Then he looked at me and said, "I like it. I'll do it." Door bursts open. In comes Colonel Parker and the head of his publishing company with contracts that Earl to sign, giving away their rights to the publishing, which I guess was pretty normal in the Elvis world.
Mm-hmm.
And so before they signed anything, Billy Goldenberg, who I'll never forget this, who's still one of my best friends, said, "I've got to be really honest, Steve. I can't have my name on this. Earl wrote the words and the music by himself." And he took an eraser and erased his name off the lead sheet. That cost Billy Goldenberg hundreds of thousands of dollars in what he would have gotten as residuals and royalties for the song. And the amazing thing about If I Can Dream is that Elvis never, ever, after the 68 special, performed it again. It was so special to him. And so I to this day, I get goosebumps when I hear it. Going through the experience with him, and honestly, when we went to do the orchestra track for it, Elvis we just finished a big recording session with all the musicians, and there were some, I think, by the time we finished the special, we had like 42 musicians. Elvis had never sung with anything larger than a rhythm section in his life, and insisted when I brought the orchestra in that I send him all home if he didn't like Billy's arrangements and so forth. But, once the downbeat happened, he loved it. In fact, when he went to Vegas, he got a bigger orchestra.
Yeah, that's another thing, that he took from his experience working with you, and he kind of incorporated into his performances throughout the 70s. I love the story. I love that end note story about Billy erasing his name from the credits. I know Billy Goldenberg's work he scored a lot of film and television throughout the 70s and 80s, and
sure did.
Many of my favorite shows. So I've always liked him as an artist. I was not aware that he had. I was not aware that he had removed himself from the credit. I respect him more as an artist and as a person as a result of that story, Steve.
Well, I appreciate it, and he well deserves it. He's really, he's really a special human being. And I used to go to some recording sessions when we were doing Petula Clark. He and Michel Legrand would play together, dual pianos, and that was really exciting.
Wow! Yeah.
Just for fun. I mean, they weren't being paid, or they weren't, but they just. Petula was good friends with Michelle. She introduced Billy to him, and the two of them hit it off. And next thing you know, they're playing piano together. It was fantastic.
Steve Binder, always a pleasure to chat with you. I look forward to our next conversation.
Same here, Ed. Very much. I really enjoy having the opportunity to speak to you. You ask great questions, and I hope I don't bore you with my answers.
Oh no! We could easily go on. We could easily go on a lot longer. Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back.
If you haven't been listening to TV Confidential, this is who you're missing.
Shirley Jones,
Diane Baker,
Bobby Hall, Channing Chase, Charlene Tilton, Cherie J. Wilson, David Franco, Peggy King, Shelley Morrison, Karen Kardashian, Joanne Worley,
and many, many more of your favorite celebrities and people behind the scenes in the world of television. That's TV Confidential, every week on this station, and every day online at tvconfidential.net.
Hi, this is Taylor Hicks, and you're listening to TV Confidential.
Ed Roberts with a reminder that the next edition of TV Confidential will premiere next week on this station at the usual time. We hope you'll join us for that. In the meantime, a reminder that Talking 60s Drive-In Movies is available through bearmanormedia.com, amazon.com, and wherever books are sold online. For more information on Tom Lisanti, go to 60scinema.com. Also a reminder that Winterhawk's Land, the original novella by Michael Dante that is a sequel to the 1975 movie Winterhawk, is also available through Bear Manor Media as well as Amazon.com. If you want to order an autographed edition of Winterhawk's Land, you can do so directly from Michael Dante himself by going to Michael's website, michaeldanteway.com. Finally, if you want to contact Cory Cooper, you can do that directly by emailing him at elvisexpert@aol.com. That'll do it for our program tonight, folks. Ed Robertson, on behalf of Tony Figueroa, Donna Allen, Phil Grice, and Greg Airbar, thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you next time on TV Confidential.